One of the people that Donald Trump's team paid to try to uncover widespread voter fraud after the 2020 election is now speaking out and revealing that obviously he couldn't find what the Trump campaign was looking for. Well, this story is super fascinating. A man by the name of Ken Block, who is a software engineer, appeared on CNN last night to tell his story. And it's a quite interesting one. Ken Block was hired by Trump after the 2020 election to try to uncover outcome determinative voter fraud, to back up these wild claims Trump was and still is making. And I've talked about in the past the fact that Trump's team hired people and tried to find proof of Trump's big lie, and they just couldn't do it. Ken Block is an example of one of the people who led a team in these investigations. And for obvious reasons, he was hesitant for a long time to come forward, because now, as we've seen with all of these people who talk about, speak, back up the truth about Trump and his election lies, he's going to become an enemy of Trump's followers, will be harassed, threatened, and seen as a part of the deep state or something. But still, he decided to finally go ahead and speak out publicly. So much credit to him. Again, software engineer hired by the Trump camp to investigate voter fraud in swing states. And as we very well know by now, there wasn't proof of the election being stolen, because it wasn't. Trump lost fair and square, and Block had to tell Trump's people that. Here is Ken Block on Aaron Burnett's show on CNN.
I really appreciate speaking to you, and I know you took your time to figure out if it was the right thing to do for you to speak out. But you were hired by Team Trump to investigate voter fraud, and you were focused, I know, on the 6 key swing states, one of which, of course, we were just talking about, Arizona. So what was the bottom line from everything you looked at, Ken? Did you find the widespread fraud they wanted you to find?
Well, thank you for having me on, and good evening. And no, in my job looking for voter fraud for the campaign, we didn't find enough fraud to have impacted the result of any election in any of the swing states that we took a look at. But much more importantly, the campaign asked me to look at claims of fraud that other people were making, and these claims were coming in fast and furious in the 30 days after the election. My team looked at approximately 15 or so claims, every one of which we were able to prove was false. Every one of which. I mean, and as you say, you were inundated, I guess at one point, maybe a theory a day. I mean, just like coming in from everyone in Trump's orbit. Can you talk at all about which claims stand out to you? Or, when you look back on it now, when they throw the ball into your court, which one of them really stands out to you now? Well, I mean, they were all quite different, honestly, and they all stood out for different reasons. At the end of the day, if I was going to classify the different fraud claims, some of them were, I believe, honest efforts by people who didn't understand what they were looking at. They misinterpreted data, came up with a wild finding that was bizarre and couldn't possibly be right, and that was easy to sort of swat away. Others were literally college professors bringing forward complicated mathematical theories that claimed to prove that in one state or another state there was massive amounts of fraud. And those took a lot more work, not only because I had to hack my way through a pretty dense mathematical theorem, but at the end of it, I had to discuss with groups of lawyers and campaign consultants and other people who had no idea what I was going to be talking about to describe in layman's terms why this claim that on its face must have been accurate because of where it came from was in fact false.
I mean, that's pretty crazy. Nothing about what he is saying is surprising, because we've looked at all the facts about the election ourselves and know what he's saying to be true. But to hear the ins and outs of receiving these theories and having to explain to pro-Trump people why they were not accurate is pretty wild. And good for him, again, for speaking out. He is putting himself and his family at risk by making his face and name known publicly. So I really do give him so much credit, but it's really horrifying. Again, we reflect on this, that something like 70 or 80% of Republicans believe the 2020 election was stolen, despite every court case, audit, investigation, recount, Trump's own administration officials like Bill Barr rejecting the claims, or his own cyber guy, and now one of the individuals who led a team that sought to uncover the very evidence Trump was looking for is also rejecting these claims. But it doesn't matter to Trump's followers. Their ambition to believe the idea is stronger than their ambition to believe the truth. And it's honestly heartbreaking because, as you've all seen many times, I've talked to so many Trump supporters now at rallies and for mochas with MAGA, and unlike the Republican leaders who know better and are choosing for political purposes to lie to their followers, these individuals really buy into it. You can see it in their eyes when they're ranting about the stolen election. And now they're so bought into it that it's become sort of like a supernatural religious belief. And so no amount of evidence can budge them on it. And I really don't know how we are going to change that. It's such a huge portion of the country now. Because on top of all the available evidence proving Biden was elected legitimately, we now have the guy Trump hired to find the evidence saying there's no evidence. And we all know it's not going to make a difference for Trump supporters. For a majority of the Republican Party, there's quite literally nothing that could be brought out in public that could sway them on this issue. And that's why people call MAGA a cult, because they have something. They have something that goes above all evidence, above every policy issue, above the very concept of truth. And that something is a man by the name of Donald Trump. Super frightening. Here's a little bit more from their discussion.
Tens of millions of people receive this information. They desperately want to believe that President Trump improperly lost the election, and they're ready to believe it, and they're ready to take action if asked to help correct what they believe is a wrong. And one of the main reasons that I'm out here with this book talking about my experiences in looking is to provide the direct evidence. I was paid to look for this fraud. I was paid to vet the fraud in preparation for these cases to go to trial. And this was for a group of attorneys within the campaign who were serious about their jobs, and they did their due diligence. That's what I was performing for them. I was providing due diligence.
Yeah.
I found nothing, reported that. They took that information, accepted it, reported it up the line to Mark Meadows, who was the chief of staff at the time. Mark Meadows then communicated the findings that there were no fraud to the Oval Office. So it has to be told. This story needs to be told. People need to understand what really happened in terms of fraud, and to try to understand what actual fraud is as opposed to hearsay evidence, which is most of what people are being told is evidence of fraud.
And he's exactly correct. And he touched on in that clip a little bit of what I mentioned as well in terms of this ambition to believe the lies. People want so badly to believe that Trump lost improperly, as he put it, that they're more willing to believe illogical things because of that, or more willing to accept things as evidence that are not. And then when confronted with facts about the election, they're able to shield their brain from absorbing those facts because of their will to believe Trump actually won. And that will is so strong, they can create a shield that deflects all logic. And here's this phenomenon playing out in real time during one of my conversations with a Trump supporter.
For example, Trump's attempts to overturn the election, wrong. So to protest against that, I would say would be correct, right?
Well, you're saying that he tried to overturn an election. What election are you trying to say you overturned? 2020? So you haven't heard anything about election fraud that's happening at all?
Well, I look
So are you
to
saying
all
that
the
in
recounts,
Georgia-
investigations, audits, and court cases.
Have you watched the Georgia election? Did you see where they pulled the ballots out from under the cabinet?
And they realized that was
They
debunked.
scanned them and scanned them and rescanned them and rescanned them. You know that lady got arrested, right?
Don't you think if that actually
she got
happened? I know a
arrested?
lot of people are suing for defamation because
But
of
you do
lies
know
about
she
people
got
like
arrested.
that. No.
Yeah, she definitely
Who?
got arrested.
Ruby Freeman?
Ruby, yeah, she definitely got
It
arrested.
turned out that even Giuliani acknowledged he was lying. he lost a defamation case, and in that case, he had to concede that he was not correct about those statements about Ruby Freeman.
Oh, no, she's definitely been arrested.
She hasn't, I promise.
She has.
So even though it's just not true that Ruby Freeman was arrested for fraud, that's a factual statement. You could find out if it's true or not. And actually, she and her daughter just won a massive defamation lawsuit against Giuliani for telling people the things that guy believes. He's still able to hold on to the belief. No facts to back it up. But he wants to believe Trump lost illegitimately so badly that he can excuse the fact that there isn't proof. Now, speaking of the Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss lawsuit against Rudy Giuliani, I did want to update you on that. Of course, Freeman and Moss were election workers in the 2020 election in Georgia. They became the center of right-wing conspiracy theories about the election being stolen, incorrectly accusing them of engaging in voter fraud. And Giuliani was one of the most prominent people attacking them after the 2020 election and lying about them. They were threatened because of these lies, had to move, and their lives were turned totally upside down. And the defamation trial relating to this just ended, as we've talked about, with Giuliani being ordered to pay in total nearly $150 million. And I'll note that Giuliani's lawyers admit he's wrong about them. Giuliani technically admitted he's not perpetuating factual statements about them in a legal filing. And he was already found, as I just mentioned, to have defamed them. And yet still, he's going on TV yesterday and saying this.
Do you allege that your allegations, your initial allegations, do you still believe them to be true?
Yeah, well, of course they'll sue me again for it when I say that, but yeah, I do. But they want me to lie. They basically are suing me in order to lie to them. I'm sorry, I can't do it. If I showed you the evidence right now, and I think you've played it on your air, people would see that what I said was absolutely true, and there's support for it. And the most important thing is, it doesn't have to be absolutely true; it has to be supportable. They have to prove that I was deliberately lying, which I wasn't. I had all this material that I based it on. So, and never got a chance to make that defense to the jury. This was the most outrageous case I've ever heard of.
So he keeps claiming that what he said was true when it's not. And we looked at last week, I think it was, a video of him outside of the courthouse repeating these same conspiracy theories about them. So they're suing him again, as they should, until he stops. The Guardian reports two former Georgia election workers who won a $148 million defamation judgment against Rudy Giuliani asked on Monday for a court order barring him from continuing to repeat the lies he spread about them following the 2020 election. The new lawsuit points to comments the former New York City mayor made during and after the damages trial last week, repeating the baseless conspiracy theories about Ruby Freeman and Wandrea Shay Moss. Those statements, quote, make clear that he intends to persist in his campaign of targeted defamation and harassment. It must stop, attorneys for the mother and daughter wrote in court documents. So they're just trying to get Rudy Giuliani to be barred from continuing to perpetuate these lies. Hopefully it works. Before we go, don't forget to become a member at lukebeasleyshow.com/membership to get the daily bonus show Monday through Friday. Plus, follow me on Threads at Luke Beasley Official, Instagram at Luke Beasley Official, X at Luke P. Beasley, and sign up for the Beasley Brief, a daily morning newsletter that summarizes the previous day's events by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/brief. And I'll talk to you all next time.